We'll be talking about handling complicated workflows with ArcGIS tasks. So just to get started, what are tasks? According to the Esri website, a task is a set of pre-configured steps. These steps will guide you and others through any workflow or business process you may have. This task can be used to implement a best practice workflow, improve the efficiency of that workflow, or create a series of interactive tutorial steps. That's a lot of words. So just to break it down, tasks are a best practice workflow. This is something that you know how you want it to go, that you've worked through, and now you're documenting in this task. This allows you to improve the workflow efficiency, so you can identify maybe some problem points and work through those to make things run a little more smoothly. And it also makes it so that you have interactive tutorial steps. So if this is a workflow that you do all the time, but you want to hand off to, say, your coworker, they should be able to go through this task and do it correctly. But I think the best part, and I'm sure we've all ran into this as GISers, is a task allows you to create a task for workflows that you don't often do. There's a lot of times that I'm asked to do different things at the GIS Center that often I only do maybe once or twice a year. And so I find myself struggling sometimes to think, all right, well, how exactly did I do this last time? Tasks allows you to document that workflow and make it so that the workflow is done the same way every single time. Example of this is such as our MCP database. We get submissions from various users, and we have to do several different things in order to make those submissions be ready to be put into our final database. So the task has really helped with that workflow in making sure that things are done the same way every single time for every submission. So getting started, I would strongly encourage you to run through the process or workflow that you're looking at once manually. And while you're doing that, you should diagram your process or write that process down. You'll want to make notes as to what tools are being used, whether it be reprojecting a file or adding attributes. You might want to add what documentation needs to occur during that workflow. Is there a point during that task that you need to send an email to a coworker, or that you need to notify an agency that this is available? That can be added as part of this task. You also want to consider, are there any supporting data needed? For the MCPD, for example, while we bring in those control points, we want to make sure that they're in the right place. So I often use the PLSS and county data to be able to identify that those points are indeed in the right place. So considering any supporting data that you need is important when diagramming that process. So we'll go on to our demo. For our demo today, Santa needs some help. As we all know, this time of year, he spends one night visiting a lot of home locations. So he wants to make sure that that database of his is up to date. He receives submissions from his operatives around the world, and those submissions are entered into the database. And our job is to enter those into the database and verify that they are correct. Now, I can neither confirm nor deny that I work for Santa, but I would imagine that this workflow would probably go something like the following. So let's go ahead and check it out. So we'll get out of here and I will pull up my ArcGIS Pro. As you can see, I already have the data that I want to use here, which is just a county map for Idaho and Montana. And in order to create a task, we're going to go up here to View, the View tab, and we will find Tasks. So this will open a new pane called Tasks. And the first thing that we want to do is to create a new task item. And you'll see over here on the right that we have the task designer open. our first item to fill out is we get to name this task. So we're going to name it Updating Santa's Stops. Now you can write who the author is. The author is automatically filled in by what you're logged in as your profile. Since we want it to be a little bit more meaningful, I'm going to go ahead and put my name in there. And then it asks for a summary. So we're going to put workflow to update Santa's stops. And then we have a description, which I'm just going to copy and paste our summary. A use limitation, we're going to put elves only. And we can add a few tags. So we can put Santa in there, Christmas Eve, and whatever we want. So I would like to draw your attention to this feature here, which is a task version. As we all know, workflows don't always stay the same as we work through them. So this gives you the option to create a task version. So as you update this task, you can change that version. You can also see that it has an auto increment. So if you don't want to try to remember to change that task version every time, you can do it here. And then it also lets you know when this was last modified, which would be today. So if you have somebody else that is also working on this, you can see when that has been changed. One thing you may notice is there is no save button, there's no done, no run. The important thing about tasks is that it is just saved in your ArcGIS Pro project. So if we want to save this task for a later date, we'll just need to make sure that we're saved the project. All right, so now that we have an item created, our next step is to create an actual new task. So we'll click this new task button here, and you'll see that the task designer has changed for the new task. So we're going to name that new task Updating Stops. We can also add a description. Collecting and adding submissions to Santa's. All right. Again, you'll see there's no stop or no save, no done. This is just automatically saved along with the project. So now that we have a task set, our next step is to add a new step. And so this is where the actual workflow comes into play, where you take that diagram that you made of your workflow and you're putting it into these steps. So for our case, the first step that I identified was I need to email the submitter to let them know that I actually received their submission. You can add a tooltip if you would like, but most important, you'll want to add instructions. So I want to say, send the following email. And then I will come and open the actual email that I have. And if your company or organization has specific wording that they want, you can add those right into here. This is just letting the person know that I've got your submission. After we review it, it'll be added to the web application, letting them know how long. For any questions, you can ask the head elf, send an email there. And then if there's any other instructions that need to be done, you can add them there. And you'll see over here on the left that that text was added. For each step, you'll notice that there is a step behavior. So there are a couple different options that we can read through here. Manual means that the user is going to run and the user proceeds. So the user controls how they move from one step to another. There's also auto run, auto perceive, and automatic. So you can choose how you want this task to run as they go from each step. We're just going to use manual in this case. So I think I am done with this step. So I'm going to go ahead and add another step. So I just come back over here and click new step, and you'll see that it's added here. If I decide that I didn't really want this step here, I can always right click and say delete. But I really do want it here, so that's what we're going to do. So my next step is I want to import the data using XY tables to point. So for the instructions, I'm going to say import the submission to a point. Now, my point submission happens to be an Excel sheet here that has the northing and eastings, and it has a bunch of information that we already determined. So to show people how I want to do this, I'm going to click Actions. And I'm going to set a command or a geoprocessing tool for this step. Right now we can see that it's none. So I just need to click over here and say Edit. And I get to choose what type of command I want. And in this case, I want to use a geoprocessing tool. And that means I need to find the tool I want. I want XY table. Normally it auto-populates here. This is the danger of doing live demos. Here we go. And it finds the tool I want, XY table to point. So that's what I'm going to pick. I'm going to say OK. And it will load that tool for me. Now here you can leave these blank if you want, but if you already know some of the things that you want, like if you know for your X filled, it's going to be X filled every time, then you can add that in there. And so that means that there would be less chance for error because it's going to automatically find that every time. So you can put as little or as much as you want in each of these, which is nice. I'm just going to leave it like that, and I'm going to say done. And that's it. I've added a new task. Now you'll see that it's not shown up here. Normally, when you're running a task, it would show here, but we're in what is called task design mode. So we're going to exit designer, click on here, and we'll see our first step is here. We'll see that it has the email. We're going to say run because we've done that step. We'll say next. And now you'll see that our next step also has that geoprocessing task that we want. So we're not quite done yet. We're going to go ahead and edit in Designer because we've realized that we want to add another step. Since I started that task is going to say, oh, it's currently in progress. Do you want to interrupt it? We do, because we want to add another step. So our next step is that we want to review the data for correctness. So we're going to say review data, give a few instructions that we want to check citation, accuracy using the counties data, and we also want them to be sure to look for null data. So once the XY table in our last step is imported, it will be added as a layer to our map, and we'll be able to look at its location and judge if it's accurate based on where it's located, and also be able to look at the attribute table to look for null values. So this is one of those documentation steps again that can be important as you're working through processes. So we're going to go ahead and add one last step here. And in this step, we want to project the data for that application. So we want to project to ArcGIS 1984 web auxiliary sphere And here you can put, I like this because, for instance, when I'm doing the MCPD, I should not talk and type at the same time. Anyway, when I'm doing the MCPD, oftentimes I have to, still not right. A lot of the submissions are in different projections. And so here, because I'm looking them up often by the WKID number, I'll add those projections here so that a person automatically knows what information I'm looking for. So this is kind of the nice thing about these instructions. Anyway, so for here, we're going to go back to actions. We're going to edit and add a geoprocessing tool. And here I, again, will look for project. I can see the data management. I'd also like to point out that there is an option for a batch project. So if I have a different workflow where I'm processing a lot of different data sets and I want to have one of these steps be a batch step, that's what I can select and have it be a batch project. Which I think is pretty cool because I'm sure that we all have a lot of different batch projects that we run into. So again, we would just pick the feature data class or feature data set. We can input the workspace. Here I can quote unquote hard code what projection I want it to be in. So when a person opens this step, it's automatically going to be set for the output coordinate system of the web Mercator, which I think is great. So yeah, so that's the batch step, and we'll again say done, and that's going to be another step. So you can have as many steps as you need in order to complete your workflow. And again, once you've made changes to your task, just to save it, you'll want to save the project. Another couple of cool features is you're able to record commands. So if you want to be able to show your user how to step through a process, you can record yourself as you're stepping through that process. It also has an option to validate. So if there was, say in this general spot, if I forgot to add instructions or forgot to add a description, it would flag that and make it so that I would be able to go back and fill in those missing spaces. So that's all I have to present. I think Tasks is a really great tool that gives us an opportunity to be able to, as I said, document those workflows that are the same every time and that we need to pass on and share to other people. It really makes a complicated process really easy to do by just mapping it out step by step. So I guess with that, are there any questions?